Dawn spilled its first rays over the Midian desert, staining the sandy hills red like blood seeping from an old wound. The wind howled through rocky crevices, carrying echoes of long-faded victory songs. There stood Miriam, the prophetess, once celebrated by a nation, who raised her voice in song after the Red Sea miracle. Yet no one, no matter how great, is immune to the lure of pride. Can a single moment of error erase a lifetime of faith? This is the untold story, not just of a fall, but of the power of grace, divine justice, in an unyielding faith. Join the journey to uncover a redemption that shines brightly amid the desert dust. In the Midian desert, where golden sands stretched endlessly under a scorching sun, the Israelites marched with hearts brimming with hope. They had just witnessed the great miracle at the Red Sea. Waters parting like living walls, enemies swallowed by raging waves, and God's hand leading them from Pharaoh's slavery. Their weary steps rang rhythmically on the hot sand, each one a declaration of faith in God's promise. At the heart of the procession, Miriam, Moses' elder sister, shone like a spiritual torch. She was not just a biblical woman, but a prophetess, a leader, with an untold story waiting to be unveiled. Her journey began here, amid tattered tents and weathered faces, where faith was tested and forged in the desert's furnace. Miriam didn't stand in Moses' shadow, her younger brother chosen by God to lead Israel through dark days. She was a flame, her eyes ablaze with faith, her voice echoing strength. From youth, she had seen miracles, from saving Moses from the Nile to enduring years of Egyptian slavery. Now, after the Red Sea victory, she stood before the people, tambourine in hand, leading the triumphant song recorded in Exodus 15. Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Her voice rang out, powerful and clear, like a wind sweeping the desert, igniting hope in hearts once cowed by whips. Thousands joined her, their song echoing across dunes, as if the desert itself trembled under faith's power. Israel saw Miriam not just as Moses' sister, but as a symbol of courage, a woman daring to rise amid hardship to remind them God never forsakes. Miriam's song was more than music. It was a proclamation, a reminder that God kept his promise. As she raised her tambourine, each beat was the nation's heartbeat, each lyric a thread binding them to each other and to God. Women in the crowd began to dance, children clapped, and even the frailest elders smiled, as if slavery's weight had lifted. Miriam, hair tousled in the desert wind, became the focal point of joy and hope. She didn't just lead the song, but guided a nation's soul, helping them see light in darkness. Her faith, radiant as a flame in the night, was a beacon for the lost. But in the brilliance of her faith, a small shadow began to creep. Moses, with his growing prominence as leader, became the focus of attention. He spoke directly with God, receiving divine guidance, and the people saw him as a savior. Miriam, though a prophetess, felt a crack in her heart. She didn't doubt Moses' mission. She loved him, the brother she'd protected as a child in a basket on the Nile. But silent questions stirred. Why is Moses alone chosen to hear God's voice? Do my role, my songs, my prayers truly matter? A seed of envy, though tiny, quietly sprouted in her soul, foreshadowing an inner conflict ready to ignite. These thoughts weren't betrayal, but signs of a human wrestling within. Miriam still led the people, still sang praises to God, but in her heart a storm brewed, a tempest of pride and comparison. She shared these thoughts with no one, not even Aaron, her other brother, who quietly grappled with his own role. Miriam kept them hidden, as if voicing them would deepen the fracture within. But the desert, with its harshness and silence, has a way of exposing the heart's secrets. The Midian desert wasn't just a barren land of blistering days and bone-chilling nights. It was a crucible forging souls, exposing human flaws, testing faith to its limits. Miriam, with her courage and fervent faith, had sparked hope for a nation. But she was human, with moments of weakness, unspoken questions, and nameless fears. Her untold story isn't just about grand victories, like the song by the Red Sea, but about moments of doubt, mistakes, and the journey to rediscover light. As Miriam stood among the people, eyes fixed on the distant horizon, none suspected a fateful trial approached. The crowd still sang, still marched, but within her an unseen battle had begun. Her journey reminds us that even the strongest faith can waver under inner whispers. In this desert, with only sand and sun, God would continue writing her story, a tale of divine justice, grace, and redemption. Have you ever wondered, can one moment of doubt destroy a lifetime of trust? Join the exploration, for Miriam's untold story is just beginning. Under the pitch-black night sky of the Midian desert, flickering fires from Israel's tents glowed like lost stars on earth. Cold winds swept through, carrying the rustle of sand and the anxious whispers of the people. After the Red Sea triumph, hope that once blazed now gave way to weariness and unspoken questions. In Miriam's tent, a small flame lit her face, a prophetess, a leader, but also a woman wrestling with cracks in her soul. Her untold story, once radiant with victory songs, now entered a tense chapter where pride and divine justice collided fiercely. Miriam sat by the fire, hands clutching the tambourine that once led the people in praising God. But tonight she didn't sing. Her heart was heavy, not from the desert's heat or the journey's hunger, but from a storm swirling within. Moses, her younger brother, increasingly drew all eyes. He spoke directly with God, receiving divine guidance, and the people revered him as a savior. Miriam didn't doubt Moses' mission. She had protected him as a child in a basket on the Nile. But a sharp question cut into her soul. Why is Moses alone chosen? I'm a prophetess too, I hear God. So why does my role fade? The seed of envy, once tiny, had taken root, sprouting into pride. Aaron, her brother, shared similar unease. In their tent, they whispered bitterly. Moses married a Cushite, Aaron said, eyes flashing with indignation. A foreigner! How can God accept this? Miriam nodded, but Aaron's words were a pretext. The deeper truth, she felt overshadowed, left behind in Moses' glory. Their criticisms targeted not just Moses' wife, but the authority God gave him. Doesn't God speak through us too? Miriam asked, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. In that moment, she was no longer the prophetess guiding the nation, but a woman letting pride cloud her faith. Their words spread like wildfire in the night, reaching the people. Some began murmuring, doubting Moses, who had led them through the Red Sea. In her tent, Miriam tried to pray, seeking God's guidance as she once did. She knelt, hands trembling, whispering pleas, "Lord, enlighten me, show me your will." But this time no answer came. Her prayer faltered under a chilling sense, as if an invisible veil separated her from God's presence. Her heart pounded, a foreboding rising. God's anger was near. Divine justice, which she once celebrated in her victory song, now prepared to judge her. Tension in the camp grew. The people, unaware of the full story, sensed unease. Wary glances passed around fires, whispers spreading like desert wind. Moses, with a humble heart, continued leading. But he wasn't blind to the division Miriam and Aaron sowed. He didn't confront or argue, choosing silence, a silence that fueled Miriam's anger. "Why does my brother say nothing?" she wondered, feeling abandoned by her own family. Her pride, now ablaze, obscured the courage that once led her to sing in the desert. But divine justice doesn't slumber. In that dark night, as Miriam stood alone outside her tent, gazing at the star-filled sky, an unseen force enveloped her. Not the light of grace, but the stern presence of God. She recalled her song, "The Lord is my strength and my song." Now she questioned if she still deserved that song. Her criticisms of Moses, her envious thoughts, rose like daggers piercing her conscience. The courage that once lit a nation now faced the test of her own mistakes. The Israelites, though unaware of the family conflict, felt the rift. Some stayed loyal to Moses. Others were swayed by Miriam and Aaron's whispers. The desert, with its harsh silence, seemed to await a verdict. Miriam, once a beacon of faith, stood at a fateful crossroads. This conflict wasn't just about Moses or his Cushite wife, but about pride, rivalry, and whether she had the courage to face her errors. Miriam's journey, begun with triumphant songs, now entered a painful phase. Divine justice approached, not to destroy, but to teach her humility and grace. Could she rediscover faith's light, or would she be consumed by her own darkness? Her untold story reminds us that even the strongest can stumble, but the courage to rise shapes destiny. Have you ever wondered, when facing mistakes, will you choose pride or humility? In the Midian desert, a fierce sandstorm raged, as if the heavens trembled with divine wrath. Winds howled through the tents, swirling blinding dust. But amid the chaotic darkness, a holy light broke through, shining on Miriam. She stood alone, facing divine justice, her heart pounding. Once a prophetess leading Israel with victory songs, Miriam now confronted the consequences of her pride. Leprosy, a mark of God's judgment. Yet in her deepest suffering, her untold story reveals a journey of grace and redemption, where courage and faith were tested to their limits. The moment of judgment struck like lightning. After criticizing Moses and his Cushite wife, Miriam and Aaron had challenged God's authority, but God didn't stay silent. As Numbers 12 recounts, he summoned the three siblings to the tent of meeting, where his glorious cloud descended. His voice rang out, stern but clear. "Why do you dare speak against my servant Moses?" Miriam felt the weight of each word, as if every syllable hammered her pride. When the cloud lifted, she looked at her hands. Her once smooth skin now white and blotched like snow, a sign of leprosy. The people around gasped, stepping back, whispering in fear. Aaron beside her paled, realizing the cost of their reckless words. Miriam, once Israel's spiritual flame, stood in the desert like an outcast. Leprosy wasn't just physical pain, but a symbol of isolation. from the people, her leadership role, and seemingly from God himself. Anguish engulfed her, but in that darkness, a spark flared. Courage. Instead of collapsing in despair, Miriam knelt on the scorching sand, trembling hands raised to the sky. "Lord, I have sinned," she whispered, voice choked but resolute. "I let pride blind me. Do not turn from me." Her prayer, though faint, was a decisive act, not denying divine justice but pleading for grace. It was the moment she chose to face her error, choosing faith, resentment. Moses, the brother she criticized, witnessed it all. His heart held no grudge. Instead, he knelt before the tent, eyes brimming, and pleaded with profound humility. "God, please heal my sister." Moses' prayer rang out, simple yet powerful, a bridge linking Miriam to God's grace. The people, watching from afar, held their breath, sensing the sanctity of the moment. The storm's wind seemed to calm, and the holy light, once stern, softened, enveloping Miriam like an invisible cloak. It was the first sign of redemption, a promise that divine justice wasn't an end, but a door to renewal. Yet God's judgment didn't lift immediately. Miriam faced 7 days of isolation outside the camp, a penalty reminding her that mistakes have consequences. In the desert solitude, she confronted herself, her pride that led her here, the words that hurt her brother and divided the people. Each day, she prayed, not just for healing, but for transformation. "Teach me humility," she whispered, her voice mingling with the wind. Her courage lay not in dodging suffering, but in embracing it, trusting God's grace was vast enough to lift her. The Israelites, initially terrified, began to see Miriam differently. They recalled her song by the Red Sea, how she led them through dark days. Some started praying for her, whispering hopes around campfires. Moses, ever generous, kept his gaze on the horizon where his sister endured her penalty. Aaron, once her accomplice, stood silent, heavy with remorse. The camp waited, not just for Miriam's healing, but for a sign God remained with them, even in their failures. The moment divine light enveloped Miriam marked redemption's start. But her journey wasn't over. 7 days of isolation taught her a profound lesson. Faith isn't perfection, but the courage to rise after falling. Miriam, who once led with songs, now led herself through an inner desert, finding grace in judgment. Her story reminds us that divine justice is never separate from love, that God judges to heal, not destroy. As the 7th day neared, Miriam rose, hands still marked by illness, but her heart lighter. She knew redemption wasn't just physical healing, but soul renewal. Her courage, forged in suffering, became a new flame, not of pride, but of humility and faith. Miriam's journey testifies that even in the deepest darkness, God's grace can bring us back to light. Have you ever wondered, when facing judgment, will you choose to fall or seek grace? At the edge of Israel's camp, where Midian's desert sand merged with the night's darkness, Miriam stood alone, isolated from her people. Cold winds howled, carrying the anxious murmurs of those who once sang her victory songs. Leprosy, the mark of divine justice, clung to her, whitening her skin like snow. The Israelites, who once saw her as a spiritual flame, now shrank back, their eyes filled with fear and doubt. But in her darkest moment, Miriam's untold story reached its climax, a miracle of faith revealing that divine justice doesn't destroy, but teaches humility and leads to redemption. The 7 days of isolation were a harsh trial. Miriam, who once led with songs by the Red Sea, now stood alone, cut off from fame, her prophetic role, and seemingly from God. Each night she knelt on the cold sand, facing doubts gnawing at her soul. Will God truly forgive me? She wondered, her trembling voice blending with the wind. The pride that drove her to criticize Moses loomed like a specter, haunting her thoughts. Yet in solitude, Miriam found new strength, not in leading but in surrender. She prayed not to demand, but to entrust. Lord, teach me humility, she whispered, raising shaking hands to the sky. Her faith, though shaken, was a small flame piercing the darkness. In the camp, the Israelites were gripped by unease. Some whispered that Miriam was forsaken by God, her sin too great for forgiveness. Others, recalling her song, prayed, hoping for a miracle. Moses, with a generous heart, never looked away from the horizon where his sister endured. He knelt daily before the tent of meeting, pleading for Miriam's healing, not for her merits, but for God's grace. Lord, give my sister a chance, he prayed, voice thick with emotion. Moses' humility, contrasting Miriam's former pride, bridged her path to redemption. The 7th day arrived, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. The people gathered near the camp's edge, eyes fixed tensely on Miriam. She stood, frail but resolute, hands still marred by disease. Suddenly, a holy light, gentle as dawn, pierced the night sky, enveloping her. The swirling dust stilled, the winds hushed, and a sacred silence fell. The people stood speechless, sensing God's presence. Miriam, heart pounding, looked at her hands. The white, blotched skin began to heal, as if time rewound. A miracle unfolded. She was restored, not just from leprosy, but from the darkness of pride. The Israelites erupted in cheers. God has answered, one shouted, and joy spread like wildfire. Women, children, and elders embraced, singing praises to God, as if reliving the Red Sea moment. Moses ran to the camp's edge, tears in his eyes as he saw his sister step forward, in smooth, eyes radiant with renewed faith. Miriam was no longer the prideful prophetess, but a symbol of humility and grace. She knelt before Moses, whispering, "Thank you and thank God." Those simple, profound words testified that she had learned divine justice's lesson. God judges to heal, not destroy. The truth revealed in that moment shook the people. Divine justice wasn't cruel punishment, but a refining fire, forging stronger souls. Miriam, once doubted, became a living testament that God never abandons those who return to him. The people, once uncertain, found new hope. They saw Miriam not just as a leader, but as a sister who fell and rose stronger than ever. Her song by the Red Sea took on new meaning, not just praising victory, but celebrating grace. Miriam re-entered the camp, her eyes bright, not with pride, but with profound humility. She knew this miracle wasn't just physical healing, but soul renewal. Her faith, forged through suffering, became a steadfast flame, illuminating not just her path, but Israel's. Her story's climax reminds us that divine justice pairs with love, that God uses trials to draw us closer. Her journey proves that even in doubt and loneliness, faith can lift us from darkness. As the people surrounded Miriam, singing praises, she stood among them, heart full of gratitude. Her untold story, begun with pride, now peaked in redemption. But what does this mean for us today? Have you ever wondered, when facing mistakes, will you flee or trust in God's grace? Miriam's story, with its drama and inspiration, awaits its conclusion. As the first dawn broke over the Midian desert, golden rays pierced the thin mist, casting a rare peace over Israel's tents. Miriam, once isolated in the darkness of judgment, now stood among her people, her face radiant with humility and renewed faith. Her untold story, from triumphant songs to painful mistakes, led to this moment, a symbol of redemption, proof that courage and grace can lift anyone from life's harshest deserts. Her journey is not just a biblical woman's tale, but a flame inspiring American audiences who cherish second chances and faith's power. Miriam stepped from the camp's edge, where she endured 7 days of isolation for leprosy, the mark of divine justice. Her smooth skin now testified to God's miracle, but the true light shone from her eyes, reflecting a soul refined through suffering. The people, once confused and doubtful, gathered around, their eyes filled with awe and hope. They recalled her song by the Red Sea, how she led them through slavery's dark days. Now they saw a new Miriam, not the prideful prophetess, but a sister and leader who rose from error with extraordinary courage. Moses beside her smiled, his eyes glinting with forgiveness and love. He never reproached Miriam for her criticisms, knowing faith's journey includes cracks. As she knelt before him, whispering thanks, the people fell silent, sensing the moment's sanctity. "Thank you, Moses," she said, voice trembling but sincere. "And thank God for giving me a chance to start again." Those simple, profound words touched every heart, reminding them that redemption is not just physical, but a soul's renewal, a light guiding through darkness. Miriam rose, raising her tambourine, but this time, she didn't sing of victory over enemies. She sang of grace, the courage to face mistakes, and God's love ever waiting for those who return. Her clear, powerful voice rang through the tranquil desert. Joined by the people's chorus, women danced, children clapped, and elders smiled, as if fear and doubt had vanished. This new song wasn't just praise, but a declaration that faith, though shaken, can be restored, that admitting error is the first step to redemption. The Israelites, once divided by whispers of doubt, found unity in Miriam's story. They saw her not just as a leader, but as a sister who fell, but didn't stay down. A woman in the crowd, hands calloused from labor, whispered to her daughter, "If Miriam can rise, so can we." Her words spread like desert wind, sparking hope in faltering hearts. Miriam, with newfound humility, became a symbol of second chances, a value American audiences cherish, where stories of recovery resonate deeply. Moses, standing quietly, felt the moment's power. He knew Israel's journey, like Miriam's, held more trials ahead. But his sister's story reminded him that God never abandons his people, that divine justice pairs with grace. As Miriam led the people forward, she was no longer a prideful flame, but a gentle light, guiding the lost. The Midian desert, once a harsh testing ground, became the stage for a new beginning, where faith was strengthened and courage celebrated. Miriam's story echoes through time, touching today's audiences. Faith and courage aren't perfection, but the strength to rise after falling. God's grace, like dawn over the desert, awaits those who return. From a prideful prophetess, Miriam became redemption's icon, proving no mistake is too great for God's forgiveness, no darkness too deep for His light. Her journey invites us to face our own deserts, moments of doubt, failure, or pain, and ask, will we choose to fall or rise? As Miriam stood among her people, her gaze fixed on the horizon where dawn blazed, she knew her journey, and Israel's was unfinished. But she walked with a new heart, forged by divine justice and steeped in grace. Her story, with its drama and inspiration, leaves a profound spiritual mark. What desert in your life will you rise from? Let Miriam's journey inspire you, for redemption's light awaits even in the darkest days. Not all who love God escape trials. Not all who sing His praises never stumble. But in those stumbles, grace shines, and faith, when tested, becomes pure as refined gold. Miriam, sister, prophetess, leader, faced herself, the pride stirring in her heart, and the divine justice descending. A new journey unfolded, not just conquering the promised land, but conquering her own soul. That journey, beautiful, painful, and inspiring, awaits its telling.